Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Red Devils. And a big week ahead for Manchester United. We are now 48 hours after the draw to Ipswich Town, which really highlighted a lot of the issues that Ruben Amorim is going to have to address. I do think the reaction to the game has been really, really stupid. It's all been blown completely out of proportion, and all of a sudden, everyone's like this complete tactical, a genius breaking down why his tactics will never work in the Premier League after 90 minutes. And 90 minutes, by the way, against a team which before United had beaten Spurs 2-0, and the Spurs team which then beat City 4-0. So nothing like a little bit of perspective, I think, is the order of the day, because we are talking about a side which will play in their first ever game under Ruben Amorim, and it was always going to be expected to have issues with a completely brand new system and a lot of players who hadn't had a lot of time to adjust to the system. And I think we saw that. We saw some really good moments within the system. I mean, the first goal was absolutely superb from United. Within the first 5 minutes, you 1-0 up and you're thinking happy days. Now, it took a really good goal in the end to equalise for Ipswich. That goal doesn't go in, for example. We get a 1-0 victory, and everyone's talking about the Ruben Amorim masterclass, etc., etc. So I think the main thing we need to caution at the moment is panic. But and this is the thing, we're going to go through some of the reaction and basically talk about how over the top it is. The reality is that Ruben Amorim took over a side last week Monday and only got the majority of his players back towards the last stage of the week, and started with a system that was brand new to the players. And a lot of these players, for example, somebody like Alejandro Garnacho would have never played in a system like this. And Amad Diallo's probably never played in a system like this. I don't even think Johnny Evans' body actually played that much in a back three, to be honest. And it was then to be expected that players weren't going to be 100% certain of their roles. It's the first time it's ever been played. So people need to understand that it is going to take time. Now, we don't really have time, to be perfectly honest. And, Ipswich would have been a game where you had to have gotten 3 points. And we did. So that's going to continue to be frustrated, but we can't sit here freaking out and saying, right, we have to go back to a back four after one game. You've got to trust the process. You can't appoint a manager who comes with a certain system and then be upset when you don't get results right off the bat. Because that's what we've done with previous managers. And you're basically just really setting yourself up for failure if you're going to sit there and expect to see results after one game and absolutely freak out if you don't see, an amazing result after one game, because he's had to build a system at Sporting. He had to bring in players, for example, that suit it. And I'm going to go to some of the different sort of criticisms of it. And some of them is very good criticism, for example. Some of them is very fair criticism, and some of them is really poor criticism. And I think that's the difference, you've got to go and look at. So, for example, Danny Murphy said as follows. He said, I'll be amazed if they were still playing a 3-4-3 in a year's time. He says, this league's very, very different from continental leagues. We've only had Chelsea in recent years win playing that system, and let's be honest, they had N'Golo Kante and Emmanuel Matic. Two wonderful defensive midfields in the middle of the pitch, and Diego Costa up top with Eden Hazard supporting him and helping him as well. They don't have those players yet, and how do you find them? It costs hundreds of millions to get the best players in the world. But this is the whole thing that everyone's saying. We're going to need a couple of transfer windows. This is why Ruben Amorim has spoken about the fact that this is going to be a 2, 3, 4 year project. Yes, you don't have a Diego Costa up front right now. Could that be Rasmus Højlund in 2 years' time? Maybe. Can we go and bring in a player, for example, that caliber within the sort of next 2 summers? Potentially. Could Manuel Ugarte become what N'Golo Kante was? He might be. But we can't sit there and completely destroy a system after a single game where players still don't understand the system itself. For all we know, these players could be very capable of playing in this system. I mean, nobody ever has ever doubted Pep Guardiola at City, and and how he plays, for example, how his football plays, how his team is set up. And you go look at the season he's currently having, and it's the worst season he's had in years so far, to be honest. I mean, if we go back and look, the last time City won a match was against Southampton on the 26th of October. They have lost, I think, 5 games in a row. 2-1 against Spurs in the League Cup, 2-1 against Bournemouth down, 4-1 against Sporting, playing at 3 at the back, just by the way, 2-1 against Brighton, and then 4-0 against Tottenham. But no one's ever going to have a freak out about Pep Guardiola's system, for example, the fact that he's too stubborn to change and the likes, because it's Pep Guardiola and he's earned the right to do that. Ruben Amorim has earned the right. My biggest point at the moment is that Ruben Amorim has earned the right to play his system because he's had success with it. He's won the Portuguese league, for example. He went and beat City 4-1. He has won things with the system. He has turned Sporting into the giants that were undefeated when he left this season, haven't lost a game. So he's done the hard yards. He's won the right to play the system he wants to until it fails. And a 1-0 result, a 1-1 result against Ipswich is not a colossal failure. The results that we're going to judge him on is going to be, for example, maybe even on Arsenal, because that's, next week, for example. But that's probably a decent result, a decent game to start judging on. There'll be 4 games in. For me, the way we judge Ruben Amorim sort of comes like Liverpool in January, for example. Even City on the 15th of December, when he's had a full month and 2 months to put a team together and should be ready. That's when we really need to start judging what's happening. And but realistically, you kind of have to judge what happens this time next year, once we've had a summer transfer window where we can look at offloading players, bringing in certain players, and then maybe sort of seeing how the team starts to all fit together. And if you're sitting there looking at this team and saying, well, it doesn't fit together, the system's not working, we're far too, defensively frail, for example, we're not scoring enough goals, and we're losing really, really poor games, then you can sit there and say, right, well, the system is the problem. He needs to move away from the system. But you're speaking to, I think it was Jamie Carragher was speaking about the fact that, he disagreed in terms of Ruben Amorim, because Ruben Amorim said that, the system's not that different, playing 3 at the back, 4 at the back, a lot of the principles are the same, just the way you kind of move and the way you sort of work together, that's a bit different. Now, that I think is probably, quite, simplistic to say it's the same. And this was sort of Jamie Carragher saying, he said it's not as simple. But I think the main thing, for example, is players need to be familiar with whatever system they're playing, So, for example, if you've got a player who plays a 3 at the back for his country and 3 at the back for his club, for example, you'll understand that system inside and out. And that's why sometimes England, for example, have struggled when they've gone to a back 3, where they become defensively very solid, but they don't really always understand how to attack, for example, because it's not a system that they are used to playing. And that's why some players can go from a club 4-3-3 to an international 4-3-3, understand the system, and be a lot more competent. The main thing is it's going to need time. So we can sit there and try and break down a disjointed United performance under a new manager until the cows come home. The reality is it's too soon. And next week will probably also be too soon. It'll be interesting to see, for example, how things line up on Thursday, and whether we're going to see different players in different positions. So, lots of people that were criticizing Garnacho, and one of those people was Robbie Savage. So Robbie Savage said the following about Garnacho playing in that number 10 role, saying, "I don't think Ruben Amorim's system suits Alejandro Garnacho. He was used as one of the number 10s. I think he is better as one of the wing backs." Now, he might be better as one of the wing backs, but the main thing is it's the first time we've ever played this system. So it'll probably be the first time Garnacho's really ever played in a number 10 role, where he has to sort of drop in and play a couple more passes, for example. It doesn't have that width, not really necessarily taking on as many players. And he might well end up in the wing back role, for example, where Amad Diallo was playing. But again, it's the first game. We've got a couple of injuries. These will change. Where people play will change. And their awareness and their understanding of the role will change. And as Sergio Aguero was saying, sometimes people forget how young Alejandro is. And he is very young. He's got to learn these different things. So we can't just say, well, he can never work in the system until he's had a fair chance to actually play in it. And that's the problem at the moment, is that no one is ready to give people and give these players a fair chance and to see how they actually might adapt. Marcus Rashford, scored a goal within 3-4 minutes of playing through the middle. Now, where is he going to play throughout the rest of the season? Is he going to play as that number 9, for example? Are we going to see Rasmus Højlund play in the number 9? In which case, are we going to see Rashford in as a number 10? Or is he going to be potentially as a wing back, for example? So we still yet to see exactly how this team might form together. Ugarte came off the bench over the weekend. He'll probably become a starter under Amorim. Kobe Mainoo, for example, what's going to happen with him when Luke Shaw comes back? So the main thing is, it's just there's so much that still needs to happen. There's so much that still will happen with this United side over the next few weeks. And we can't sit there and make these big sweeping statements on a manager who's managed 90 minutes of United. It's an absolute moot point. It's absolutely pointless. And it's really frustrating that so many people are ready to completely ditch him, for example, to say he's not good enough, and to basically just decide that he's never going to be good enough, and we need to he needs to change the system and the likes, and he needs to change everything because of that. Now, what was quite interesting is the idea of versatile players, and Ruben Amorim, for example, identified Mazraoui as a player who's going to be very important because of how adaptable he is. And we've actually seen him even under Erik ten Hag. He played the number 10 role in Europa. It didn't really work, but he obviously got the ability to play in different positions. And he said, at the moment, Ruben Amorim said, we don't have too many centre-backs, so we have to adapt some players. He said, I thought Nasser Mazraoui did very well. He is so smart and he is so important for us. He can play anywhere, and that kind of player is crucial for our future. So that's a really good sign that a player that Erik ten Hag brought in, for example, is going to work under Ruben Amorim. I think he will. I think he is versatile. I think he can play quite attacking. I think he's quite good in the defense, and I think he ticks a lot of boxes. So that's definitely been our best summer recruitment, and ironically was the cheapest. But it's really good to see that a certain player we did recruit in the summer is going to potentially work in the system, because we don't want to sit there with another player that we brought in and we're sitting there going, oh, what do we have to do with him, and how do we offload him? And one of those players is Joshua Zirkzee, who's come under a lot of criticism, and I think this is standard older players just speaking absolute crap, to be honest. Gordon Hill, who played for United, I think he retired in about 91. He has gone on social media, I'm surprised you can use it, and he's gone after Joshua Zirkzee, saying as follows. He says, what pisses me off is that Zirkzee has a number 11 on his back, is some taking the Mickey. That is a treasure number worn by great wingers. He says, take away numbers as they mean nothing anymore. No wonder there's no pride in putting on a shirt with your name on it. Zirkzee has not been good. Zirkzee's also been there for 4 months. What's to say that this guy doesn't go on a run of form and in 3-4 years' time he's played a couple of hundred games for the club and he's a really important player? Who knows? But I'm so bored of, and the reason he's pissed off because he wore the number 11 at United. But how can you go after a player, and say there's no pride in the jersey? He's been there for 4 months. Like, the guy's barely had a chance to go, and if he does go, then cool, whatever. But I'm so bored of this whole idea of, that's why there's no pride. Well, a player's come in during a bad time at United and hasn't played particularly well. Are you going to sit there and say that Marcus Rashford has, disrespected the number 10 jersey because he's in bad form at the moment? Now, yes, there is a strong case about the moment of United having gotten things very wrong in the last 10 years. You look at the number 7 jersey, for example, and it has definitely lost its shine. But all the jerseys have lost their shine because the team's not in a good space. And over the years, if you go back into United's history, we've not always been a particularly successful club. So there would have been lots of people wearing the number 11 jersey who were not world class. It's only because you went on a 20 to 30 year complete phenomenal sort of run where we were the best club in the world for years and years and years, where suddenly you had Ryan Giggs wearing the number 11 jersey, one of the most iconic United players of all time, that you look at the number 11 jersey and go, oh my goodness, how phenomenal is this jersey? But, the number 18 jersey is iconic because of Paul Scholes, because of one player who came through and sort of changed everything and was so good in that jersey. So, players comments like that just don't help. They do that, and all that is somebody trying to remain relevant. Somebody who played for United in the 70s and doesn't really know what else he can really sort of contribute at the moment. So yeah, things like that I find really, really in poor taste. It's almost like they don't have anything else to worry about in their lives. They retired and they thought, oh, you know what, let me go on social media and decide that this guy that has been there for 4 months is hopeless, terrible, and never going to be good enough. And he was a good player. Was going. He's good numbers, for example. Played on the left wing, and so I'm no issue with him having pride for his jersey. But you can't go after a young player who's not been at the club for very long, in a completely tumultuous time and say, well, he's just never going to be good now. I mean, the kid's 23 years old, and let's wait and see what he does. If he leaves the club and he doesn't work, then cool. Yeah, so let's sit there and say, well, maybe things didn't go well for him, but he's only just started playing international football this year, for example. So he's made the step up. He scored his first international goal as well. This is supposed to be the time where he really starts taking a step up. He's 23 years old. You can't make calling him at 23 years old. I mean, he could go on to play United 5, 6, 7 years. He could leave with 300 games for United, which is more than, for example, Gordon Hill. And you sit there going, well, actually, mate, he played more games than you. Maybe he goes and wins trophies with United. Maybe he leaves with more trophies than someone, for example, like a Gordon Hill might. So, yeah, players like that, and comments like that, I think are just so unproductive. I think it doesn't help anything. And, I just think it's, fine, get a life at the end of the day. Get a life. And a lot of players I think are like that, and you can always see, for example, someone like a Paul Scholes is very negative about the club. But it's always interesting to see how certain players, ex-players, treat the club, and some of them are very negative about it, and they can't do anything right, and some of them are a little bit more fair, and talk about the fact that that's tough, for example, and this is what, and they're very aware of the reasons some of the reasons that they're not succeeding, and that there can be other potential factors, and it's just lazy. I always find it's very lazy analysis. As soon as you lose a game or draw a game, it's because there's no passion. And it's because there's no running, and because players are lazy. And if it was as easy as to just go out, work hard, be passionate, all of a sudden you'd win trophies, Burnley would have won a lot of trophies under Sean Dyche. It's not that simple. It never has been, never will be. And until people start realizing that, we're just going to continue to get really, really poor and off the mark criticism, which does not actually add any value, is very far off the mark, and makes no help whatsoever. Some more interesting news is that youngster Chido Obi Martin has been included in the Manchester United squad for the UEFA Youth League clash this week. He is somebody that is supposed to be sort of potentially being fast-tracked into potentially senior training quite soon. Very, very exciting young player. And he debuted earlier in October for United. He scored a hat-trick within 15 minutes, for example. And he's supposed to be one that's really, really highly rated for the future. Now, we're not going to see him for a while. He's still very young. But he's worth tracking. So if you do have time, go and tune into that under-18s, that youth league game. Go and see what it's all about. Go see what he's all about. And you can see that hopefully United have actually got a really, really good, nice young player that we managed to get from Arsenal. And it'll be interesting to see when we start seeing him within the first league setup. Because I think that we will start seeing him relatively soon. In terms of training, I don't think we'll necessarily debut out of him, but we'll see him, I think, training within the next couple of years. And in terms of other players that potentially we might see, is that there's a report going around that Ruben Amorim is now looking at Francisco Trincao, who has played for him under different clubs. He gave him his debut at Braga, he's played under him at Sporting, and now potentially is a target for United in the summer, which would mean that he would play for a third different side under Ruben Amorim. Now, at the moment, he's got a deal with Sporting until 2026, which means that they're going to cash in on him. They should be cashing in on him next season. At the end of the day, I think we might be able to get one player out of Sporting, maybe two. I'll be very surprised if we go to get three, for example. So we need to be very careful about if we are going to go after Sporting players, who are we going to go after? What we can kind of afford, because you don't want to sit there and just try and go after all three players and get none of them at the end. And also you need to make sure they are good enough, because just because they worked under Ruben Amorim in the Portuguese league doesn't mean they're suddenly good enough to be at United and work in the Premier League. It's not that simple. So you've got to be very clever with your acquisitions. But if he's somebody that's going to fit the bill, for example, if Ruben Amorim believes he's good enough, for example, and he's worth going after, then all for it. He's 24 years old. He's very, very talented. He's been paid for Portugal since this is 2020, so he's played really since he was about 20-year-old. People would have remembered him at at Wolves, for example. He was then at Lona Sporting. He was previously at Barcelona. So he's a very talented young player. But yeah, time will tell whether we, first of all, can go after him, do want to go after him, and the likes of that. But that's going to be wrapping up for this morning. We'll be back this evening with the evening show, so please make sure you keep an eye out for us. We'll be live at 7:30. So we'll see you guys all then. Please do smash like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel